Hey now, and welcome to Stern Talk, everybody. I'm your host, B.O.S. How's it going? Let's get into a little Stern Talk. Recently, on the TV channel Vice, they had a great series of documentaries called The Dark Side of the 2000s. And two of the shows focused on shock jocks. They had a Part 1, The Rise, and Shock Jocks Part 2, The Fall. These documentaries focused heavily on Howard Stern and the way he handled anybody who thought was competition in any city that his radio show went into. I really enjoyed watching this documentary because it was a really accurate timeline of how I remember early 2000s with Howard Stern. I also like the way this documentary got first-hand accounts from people who really know Howard Stern. People like Steve Grillo, Stuttering John, Tim Sabian, the very underrated Doug Goodstein, and Jackie Martling. They also told some great, crazy stories about how ugly things got with Howard's competition. The documentary starts early in Howard Stern's career, and one of the first feuds he had was with Don Imus. The other feuds they talk about in the documentary are about Mark and Brian in L.A., the feud Howard had with Opie and Anthony, and a very ugly story about the feud Howard had with John DeBella, the zookeeper in Philadelphia. The documentary also covers the very sad story about John DeBello's wife, Annette DeBello, who ended her own life after appearing on a segment called Dial-A-Date on the Howard Stern Show. Man, that was a crazy story. No matter how ugly these feuds got, Howard always seemed to land on his feet and rise above the controversy. I was in South Florida when most of this stuff was happening, so I had no idea who the DJs were in Philadelphia, LA, New York, Boston, or wherever Howard decided to bring his radio show to and start up a feud with any DJ that was already established in those cities. The only thing that the documentary didn't talk about too much was Howard Stern's Rockin' New Year's Eve pay-per-view. Howard Stern's notoriety seemed to grow big time after that pay-per-view event. And that pay-per-view special on New Year's Eve was something that turned me into a huge Howard Stern fan. Let's face it, Howard's not the same person he was in his 30s and 40s and 50s. Looking back at a lot of those feuds that Howard had with other DJs around the nation was really cool. But in the documentary, even Howard's staff thought that he was completely out of line with a lot of them, especially the man-cow feud. That thing got super ugly. I highly recommend you watching this documentary if you haven't. Like I said, it's a two-parter, and it's called Dark Side of the 2000s Shock Jocks. Part 1, The Rise, and Part 2, The Fall. Moving on to our next story, it's being reported that Howard Stern and Bill Maher had a falling out again. Howard Stern appeared on the Bill Maher show recently, and they had kissed and made up. They buried the hatchet and were friends again. But now it's being reported that Howard is no longer friends with Bill Maher after Bill Maher's comment that Howard constantly gushes about being married to Beth. When Howard appeared on the Bill Maher show, there was a little segment where him and Bill Maher got into it about how Howard doesn't understand why Bill Maher isn't married or have a girlfriend. And Bill Maher just fired back, "Hey, I'm happy the way I am." And Howard said, "I'm happy the way I am married." And that's what makes the world go around. Some people are happy being single, and some people are happy cohabitating with other people. Bill Maher just tried to make the point that he felt like Howard was trying to say there's something wrong with Bill Maher, that he isn't in a relationship. I know people that have been single their whole lives, and they're very, very happy. Marriage can be very tough, and a lot of times married people will say they're happy when they're really not. I'm not saying that Howard isn't happy in his marriage, but he always seems to mention that how he loves being married to Beth and how he's a better person now. Bill Maher reminds Howard that, "Hey, Howard, you were married once before," and Bill just doesn't understand what's changed now that he's married with Beth. And he did not act like this when he was married to Allison. But Howard does mention a lot how happy he is being married to Beth. Moving on to our next story, Howard Stern's daughter got married, and it's being reported that Howard had to come over his germophobic fears to attend the wedding. It's being reported that his daughter had to really push Howard to get over his fears, and it was time for Howard to get over his fear of going out in public. For a while there, right after the pandemic, Howard refused to do his show in the studio. He just didn't want to be around anybody. But it seems like Howard got over his fear of germs because he did attend his daughter's wedding. He talked about it on his radio show, and he was glad that he went. I think Howard would have been very disappointed in himself if he decided to skip his own daughter's wedding due to his germophobic fears. Anyways, that's about all the Howard Stern news I have right now, and I hope everybody's enjoying my channel. If you have any comments or suggestions about my show, or you want to even talk about anything I just talked about, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I read every comment on my page. I'm going to try to get back to posting some more videos. I've already got some great old school classic Howard Stern videos that you're used to seeing on my channel queued up and ready to go. So please, if you like my channel, hit the subscribe button and come on back, because like I said, I'll be posting some new content real soon. So until then, everybody, take it easy.